Hi guys, I think one of the reasons Boris Johnson and his government want to sell off Channel 4 to the likes of Murdoch is because it's doing such a great job of holding his government to account. Here journalist Paul McNamara grills Boris Johnson on both the Northern Ireland Protocol and statements he has made about the implementation of it. A big problem is that Johnson sold it to the public as a solution to all problems, but now he's attempting to trash the withdrawal agreement or the protocol, claiming that the EU is interpreting it in a different way than it was agreed. Have a listen to Johnson's squirm here.
Less than 2 years in, this deal, this protocol, has caused the collapse of the Northern Ireland Assembly, economic hardship for firms in Northern Ireland, and now needs a major revision. Prime Minister, you must be furious with whoever signed up to a deal this bad.
Look, I'll be absolutely frank with you. My priority is, number one, get the government of Northern Ireland up and running. And the problem that we've got at the moment is that we've got one part of the community in Northern Ireland, one of the major traditions in Northern Ireland, the unionist community, that doesn't like the protocol. Actually, of the 5 parties that I've just talked to, not a single one likes the protocol as it currently operates.
Now, what Boris Johnson is doing here is he's lying and telling the truth at the same time. When he talks about the unionists, well, the unionists are not happy with the protocol because they would prefer to have a border in the on the island of Ireland, not in the Irish Sea. But when he's talking about the other parties, yes, they're not happy with the protocol, but they didn't support Brexit. So they would have preferred no protocol and no Brexit. They understand that the protocol is undoing the worst of Brexit for Northern Ireland, but they understand that it needs to be implemented. There is a majority in the Northern Ireland Assembly for the implementation of the protocol, not for having it scrapped. So I think that's important to remember.
Now, yes, I agreed it, but I agreed it on the basis that it protected the Good Friday Agreement, it protected the East-West strand of the Good Friday Agreement. It explicitly, on the face of it, says that we've got to protect the UK internal market. And that was the reason I went for it, because it seemed to me like those were things that our friends in the EU would mean sincerely.
But you can't be surprised by any of the bits that you don't like at the moment. Pretty much all of them were in the impact assessment papers. I've got them here, I've read them. Did you read them?
Of course, but
So you just ignored them then?
No, I hoped and believed that our friends would not necessarily want to apply the protocol in quite the way that they have.
In the way that they have. So this is Boris Johnson and Lord Frost and Liz Truss and others. This is their go-to response to why is the protocol creating problems? Well, because, we agreed to it and we thought it was perfect, but the problem is the EU. The EU is implementing the protocol in a way that is not in the spirit of what was originally agreed. And that's a big pile of rubbish. Because this is the withdrawal agreement itself. This was signed back in 2019 by Boris Johnson and Lord Frost. This was agreed back in 2019. Remember, as the oven-ready deal. And it says here about Northern Ireland, there will be additional documentation required on all agri-food goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland to ensure that they comply with the necessary regulations. Okay? All agri-food goods. Now, since then, the EU has tried to make it easier for goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, certain agri-food goods. But the letter of the withdrawal agreement is all agri-food goods. It goes on to say, these could include export health certificates for products of animal origin, fish and live animals, and phytosanitary certificates for plants. This would result in additional administrative cost to businesses moving goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. There it is, in black and white, in the withdrawal agreement, that this would result in additional administrative cost to businesses. Now, the response to these additional costs from the British government is, we didn't know this was going to be in the withdrawal agreement. This was not part of the EU is punishing businesses in Britain, or the EU is implementing the protocol in a way that's different than to what was signed. But don't take my word for it. McNamara mentioned the impact assessment. This was the impact This is part of the impact assessment that was commissioned by the Treasury, not the EU, not the Irish government, the British government. And it says here, this is back in 2019, economic impact on Northern Ireland. Once again, this was not published back in it was commissioned back in 2019, but it was not published. Remember, Boris Johnson said the oven-ready deal is wonderful for Britain, wonderful for Northern Ireland. This is what it actually contained. Customs declarations and documentary and physical checks on west-east and east-west trade will be highly disruptive to the Northern Ireland economy. Okay, so the UK government knew this. You can't blame the EU for that. There is therefore a clear case for reducing the burden on Northern Ireland traders. Exports: 98% of Northern Ireland exporters to Great Britain are small to medium enterprises who are likely to struggle to bear this cost. So this is not something that came out of the blue, which is something that is sold to the public in Northern Ireland by the unionist community and by the British government, the Brexiteers within the British government. These account for 61% of exports to Great Britain and 10.4% of total Northern Ireland sales by value. However, large businesses exporting to Great Britain are likely to be better equipped to withstand the increased friction, 39% of GB exports by value. So bigger businesses will be okay, smaller businesses, well, they're going to struggle. Imports: high street goods likely to increase in price, likely to affect business profitability. And there we have it. This is one of the arguments against the protocol by the likes of the DUP, that high street prices are higher because of the protocol. But this was already known. This was something that Boris Johnson and Lord Frost agreed to. They knew about this and they ignored it. So you can't blame the EU for this, especially as the EU in the withdrawal agreement talked about this. The EU said, look, we're okay with this. Are you okay with this? And Boris Johnson obviously said yes. Key employment sectors such as retail likely to be hit, and constitutes tariff equivalents of 30% of purchases in Northern Ireland. So this was known about.
Everybody knows the barriers that have been produced, the distortions, the diversions of trade. 200 UK companies no longer, 200 GB companies no longer exporting to Northern Ireland. A great deal of faff and botheration for individuals and for companies, adding to the cost of living right now. Now, I'm an optimist, and I think that this can be fixed.
And there we have it. So he eventually admits that he agreed to it, but his response is always the same. The EU is implementing it in a way that was not in the spirit of the agreement. So we have the lies clear. There it is, in black and white. The withdrawal agreement saying that there's going to be extra documentation required. This is going to create problems for additional costs to businesses, and it's backed up by an economic assessment by Her Majesty's Treasury. So can we stop with the lies and start dealing with the reality? Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.